They said I was just his wife on paper, but paper was the one thing she couldn't control. In an old drawer, buried between blueprints and bills, Marcus left me the only piece of justice I had left, his signature. I knew something was wrong the second I turned onto Cypress Lane and saw the gate open. The rosemary hedge along the path had grown wild in the days I'd been away, its scent cutting sharp through the coastal fog like a memory I wasn't ready for. The air was cold, not just from the mist, but from something deeper, heavier, the kind of cold that settles into your chest and stays there. I parked without thinking, hands still trembling from the night before, from the hospice, from the sound Marcus made when he finally exhaled for the last time. My fingers clutched the coffee I hadn't drunk, and the passenger seat still held the hospital bag I never unpacked. Our house, my house, was perched just above the cliff's edge, whitewood siding kissed by salt and thyme. The porch swing we bought on our first anniversary still creaked faintly in the breeze. For a moment, everything looked the same, but the front door was wide open, not ajar, not cracked, wide open, like an invitation or a challenge. I stepped out slowly, sea air wrapping around my ankles. My heart was thudding in a strange rhythm, grief colliding with dread. I reached the top step of the porch, my boots tapping against the wood I had painted last spring. And then I froze. The nameplate beside the door, the one Marcus carved himself with a pocket knife, the one that read, "The River's Nest," was gone. In its place was a brass plaque, newly polished, etched with Caldwell. I blinked once, twice, thinking maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe the grief was bending the world. But then I heard it. Laughter. Soft, practiced. Inside. I stepped through the door. The scent hit me first. Not the soft, smoky vanilla Marcus used to light on chilly evenings, but something synthetic. Lilac air freshener. Overpowering. A woman in kitten heels and a coral blazer stood in the living room, gesturing to the bay window with a brochure in her hand. She didn't see me at first. Too busy showing off the crown molding and original hardwood floors, just steps from the sea. Then I saw her. Iris. Seated in my reading chair, my spot, swirling tea in a porcelain cup that didn't belong to her. It was mine. White china with the faint gold rim. The set Marcus and I saved up for after our second year. She lifted the cup delicately, took a slow sip, and smiled. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. The realtor turned and jumped slightly. "Oh, you must be one of the neighbors?" I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but nothing came. "Iris Caldwell," she added quickly, gesturing with a bright grin, "is the current homeowner, just finalizing paperwork." Iris turned her gaze to me then, serene, composed, as if we were old friends running into each other at brunch. "Camille," she said, her voice laced with that gentle cruelty only she could master. "You're home early." Home. The word hit me like a slap. I stepped back without realizing, my hand brushing the door frame like it might remember me, like the wood might say, "I know you." But it didn't. And that was the worst part. The door I had passed through every day for 12 years, the door I had painted, propped open with my boot while carrying groceries, kissed Marcus under in the rain, had forgotten me. I stumbled off the porch, past the hedge, past the rosemary I planted with my own hands. The wind picked up, tossing the scent back at me, sharp and relentless. I didn't cry. Not yet. There wasn't room. Only silence and the sound of the chimes from the back garden, one of Marcus's last projects. The door had forgotten me, but the wind hadn't, and something inside me, something small and shaking, knew I wasn't done yet. The motel smelled like old coffee and bleach. too clean and still somehow unclean. Room 6A, tucked between the ice machine and the vending nook, offered no views and no warmth. Just a lumpy mattress, a television bolted to the wall, and a nightstand with a chipped corner like a broken tooth. The curtains were yellowed with age, their floral pattern faded into ghost colors. I pulled them shut anyway. Outside, the ocean murmured in the distance, familiar but unreachable. I hadn't slept. Not at the hospital, not in the car, and certainly not here. My body moved only when it had to, like it had divorced itself from my mind and was going through the motions out of pity. I sat on the edge of the bed in the same clothes I wore when Marcus died, jeans creased with sleep, a sweatshirt that still smelled faintly of cedar and citrus. His scent. It clung like a thread I was terrified to lose. The bag I packed 3 days ago was still zipped, unopened. Inside were chargers I never used, a paperback I never touched, and a change of clothes I'd forgotten I brought. What I hadn't forgotten was the voicemail. I opened my phone and played it. Camille. Hey, love. I know it's late. I just wanted to say thank you for staying, for holding it all together when I couldn't. I'll see you in the morning. The message ended with silence. Not the kind you expect from a recording, but a heavy pause, as if he wanted to say more and changed his mind. I listened to it 3 times before my thumb hovered over delete. But I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. A gull screamed somewhere beyond the parking lot, and the walls here were thin. Every sound crawled in. The rumble of passing trucks, the whir of the soda machine, a cough from the room next door. But none of it touched me. I stared at the motel phone. Beige plastic. Greasy receiver. I picked it up anyway. St. Crescent Memorial, this is Nadine. My voice came out raw. Hi, this is Camille Rivers. I need to update the guest list for Marcus Rivers' service. A pause. Of course. What changes would you like to make? I didn't hesitate. Please remove Iris Caldwell and Vivian Morrow. They are no longer welcome. Another pause. Longer this time. Understood. I hung up before she could ask why. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was something smaller, quieter, a line in the sand. For 12 years, I had played peacekeeper, smiled through veiled insults, bit my tongue until it bled, let them turn Marcus's heart into a tug of war. But he was gone now, and they were still pulling. Not this time. The curtains stirred. A breeze snuck in through the old seal in the window, carrying the salt air with it. I stood slowly, wrapped the motel blanket around my shoulders, and watched the edge of light spill in like something sacred. The day was beginning again, and this time I had something they didn't. My name. I returned to the house like a thief, though I had every right to be there. It was just past 6 a.m, the world still cloaked in that blue-gray hush that comes before sunlight dares to stretch. I parked 2 blocks away, behind the old olive tree near the playground Marcus used to call the retirement swing set. The rosemary path behind the house was overgrown, and the wooden gate creaked as I slipped through. I had forgotten how the sea air clung to everything this close to the bluff. Salt in the soil, salt in the breath. The garden had suffered in my absence. The mint patch had turned brittle, lavender wilted in its ceramic pots, and the trellis Marcus built leaned dangerously to one side. But the rosemary, it thrived, wild and thorny, like it didn't know how to die. I moved carefully across the damp grass, my boots quiet in the morning dew. The side door by the laundry room still had the same faulty latch. Marcus had promised to fix it for months, but never got around to it. I knew just how to lift and pull to slip it open without a sound. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. The air inside smelled artificial, cheap lilac and lemon cleaner, cloying and impersonal. The walls were hung with framed landscape prints I didn't recognize. The couch was now covered in garish throw pillows, the kind Iris would call tasteful, though they looked like they belonged in a discount showroom. My photos were gone, not boxed, gone. And yet, I didn't let myself mourn. Not yet. I moved quickly, past the kitchen where my mugs once sat, past the hallway where Marcus had scuffed the baseboard moving in the bookcase. Each room felt like a ghost of itself. Same bones, different skin. Marcus's office was at the back of the house, wedged between the guest room and the laundry. Iris had always called it a junk cave and refused to step foot in it. I prayed that contempt had kept her away. The moment I opened the door, I knew I was right. The air was stale, untouched. His scent still lingered, cedar, ink, and a hint of something earthy. His desk was cluttered in that precise chaos he loved. Rolled blueprints, sharpened pencils, and sticky notes layered like petals. I ran my hand across the desk, fingertips trembling. Then I saw it. A sketch. One of his final drafts for a client restoration. But in the margin, there was something extra. A square was drawn near the corner, labeled faintly in his handwriting, "C. Look here." I followed the sketch. Beneath the second drawer, barely visible, was a keyhole. I hadn't even known the desk locked. And there it was, a brass key taped underneath the top drawer, just like him to hide it in plain sight. I turned it gently. Inside was a folder, slim and sealed, with one simple label in black ink. For Camille, if anything happens. My breath caught. For the first time since Marcus died, I felt something stir. Something small, but unmistakable. Hope. I didn't open the folder until I was back at the motel, door bolted, curtains drawn tight against the slow bleed of dusk. It sat on the bed beside me for hours, silent, unassuming, like it didn't know it might change everything. I traced the ink on the front again and again. For Camille, if anything happens. Marcus's handwriting, the same loopy C he used to write on grocery lists and anniversary cards. I didn't cry. Not then. The room smelled like it always did, bleach and old air, but the folder still carried the scent of cedar, the same oil he rubbed into his desk once a month, like a ritual, like reverence. That scent hit me harder than any memory. I finally unlatched the flap. Inside were 3 crisp sheets of legal paper, stamped and notarized, a postnuptial agreement. I scanned the lines too quickly at first, heart in my throat, eyes blurring. Then again, slower. In the event of the husband's passing, all jointly owned assets, including real estate, are to be transferred wholly to Camille Rivers, unless otherwise specified in a last will and testament. There was no will, but there was this: signed, dated, witnessed, legal. The weight of it hit me like a second gravity, not because it solved everything, not yet, but because he had done this, quietly, thoughtfully, for me. Tucked in the back pocket of the folder was a single sheet of lined paper, folded twice. I opened it with shaking hands. Marcus never wrote letters. He spoke with sketches and long silences, and hands that fixed broken hinges without being asked. But this was all him. Camille, if you're reading this, something awful's happened. I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't want to scare you. You've always been the brave one. I know my mother. If she comes for the house, show this to your lawyer. I trust you to protect what we built. You made this place a home when I didn't even know what that meant. You carried the heavy parts without ever making me feel small. This house breathes because of you. Use this. Don't let them erase you. M. I read it twice. Then again. The ink was darker in some spots, like his hand had pressed harder than usual, and the M at the end, just that single letter, looked rushed, like maybe he hadn't meant for this to be his last word to me. But it was enough. For the first time since the hospital, I felt something shift inside me. Not just grief or rage, but something sharper. Resolve. Marcus had left me something stronger than memories. He'd left me truth. And now I would use it. I saw the car before the knock came. Black, polished, pretending to mourn. It idled at the edge of the motel parking lot like it was too good to be there. The windows were tinted, but I knew it was her. Iris had a way of making stillness look rehearsed, like a stage cue. When the knock finally came, it wasn't tentative. 3 sharp raps, each one clipped, calculated. I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped out barefoot into the damp morning fog, Marcus's old flannel wrapped tight around my shoulders, and the folder clutched to my chest like a shield. The asphalt was cold beneath my feet, and the motel's neon vacancy sign buzzed overhead. Iris stood near the car, perfectly composed in her signature black lace, not a wrinkle out of place. Next to her, a man in a gray suit held a clipboard like it was an extension of his spine. Lawyer, clearly. Young. Expensive. Nervous. "Camille?" Iris said smoothly, like this was a brunch appointment we'd both forgotten. "This is Mr. Atwood. He represents our family's legal interests." Our family. I let the silence stretch. The wind tugged at my hair. "We're here," she continued, "to discuss next steps regarding the house and Marcus's estate. As next of kin, I'm his wife," I cut in. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The only legal spouse. Mr. Atwood cleared his throat, shifting his weight. "Yes, well, without a formal will, state law allows for a division of assets among surviving family members. Ms. Caldwell has standing." "I'm so glad you're both here," I interrupted. Calm, but deliberate. "It saves me a trip." I raised the folder between us, the one with the cedar scent and Marcus's initials still etched in my memory. "This is a notarized postnuptial agreement," I said. "Signed. Witnessed." Filed Iris's smile froze, just for a fraction of a second. A hairline crack. "It transfers all jointly owned property, including the house, to me, effective upon Marcus's death." Atwood reached out, eager. "May I see?" "No," I said, pulling it back. "You'll get a copy through the proper channels. I've retained counsel." A long pause. The kind that changes things. "You're bluffing," Iris hissed finally, her voice low and tight. "Am I?" I asked, tilting my head. "Because if I'm bluffing, you should feel confident enough to go back to your car and celebrate." She blinked. Her mouth tightened like she'd bitten into something sour. "But if I'm not," I continued, "you've already trespassed and touched property that no longer belongs to you." Even her lawyer stepped a half step back. "You don't get to win this time," she whispered. "You were never part of our family." "No," I said. "You just never wanted to see me there." I turned and walked away, back toward the peeling motel door, the cold pavement grounding each step. I didn't look back. The fog swallowed their silhouettes. But in my chest, something had shifted, something sharp and steady. This wasn't defense anymore. It was the beginning of a war. I knew she wasn't finished. Some people lose with dignity. Iris wasn't one of them. It was early when I saw her again. Barely light outside, the sky still soaked in lavender gray. I stood in the kitchen of the house I'd once called mine, barefoot on the tile, a chipped mug warming my hands. The scent of rosemary drifted in through the cracked window, and there she was, parked across the street in her black sedan, engine off, windows half down, a curl of cigarette smoke drifting into the air like a flag of defiance. She didn't knock, she didn't call, just sat there, perfectly still, watching, like the house owed her one last breath. When I opened the front door later that morning, the envelope was already there, white, official, no stamp, slipped under the frame like a threat dressed in legalese. I didn't open it right away. I knew what it would say. It wasn't enough to steal my grief, to mock my marriage. Now she wanted to rewrite the ending. When I finally unfolded the papers, the words blurred at first. Too sharp, too clean. Formal petition. Contestation of asset transfer. Allegations of undue influence. Claims Marcus may not have been of sound mind in the months before his death. I let the pages fall onto the table. She was accusing me of manipulating him, of taking advantage of a man I had bathed, fed, carried through the worst nights of his life. My breath came shallow, not panic, not fear, something slower, heavier, rage, not the kind that explodes, the kind that simmers. And then I remembered. A passing comment, months before he died. We'd been having dinner. I was fussing with the candles, and he reached across the table and touched my wrist, gentle. "I've got that neurology consult at St. Michael's next week," he'd said, "just ruling things out." He had brushed it off, told me not to worry. I hadn't asked again. I moved fast, heart pounding, hands tearing through the suitcase I still hadn't unpacked. Bills, receipts, expired coupons, Marcus's sketchbook. And then, buried beneath a stack of unopened mail, an envelope. Crisp, sealed. Letterhead from St. Michael's Neurology Clinic. My hands shook as I opened it. "Dear Mr. Rivers, following your recent cognitive assessment, we are pleased to inform you that your results fall within the normal range. No signs of early cognitive decline were detected. Dated. Signed, official." My knees gave out. I sat on the edge of the bed, paper trembling in my lap. She thought she had found a crack, but Marcus had already sealed it. I looked toward the window, to where her car had sat. She was gone now. A retreat, not a surrender. But I had what she didn't. Proof. This wasn't about grief anymore. It was about erasure, and I would not go quietly. The courthouse smelled like old paper and fluorescent light. It wasn't a scent you could name, just one you recognized in your bones. A place where stories were broken down into statements, where grief had to be translated into legal standing. The courtroom itself was colder than I expected. Not temperature, but tone. Pale walls, chrome fixtures, white light that hummed too loudly in the silence. I sat beside Grace at the respondent's table, hands clasped tightly in my lap, folder pressed against my ribs like armor. I wore black, but not for mourning, more like camouflage. I needed to disappear long enough to strike. Iris was already seated in the front row, draped in black lace, hair pinned into a precise knot, a tissue clutched in one hand like it had been placed there by a director. Her lawyer, Atwood, leaned in to whisper something rehearsed. She didn't nod. She didn't need to. Her whole posture said, "I am the story here." I kept my eyes forward. The judge entered. Silver hair, heavy eyes, no time for theater. She called the case. Atwood rose, voice smooth, deliberate. He painted a picture of a grieving mother, of a confused son, of a complicated marriage and a house suddenly stripped away. He never said coercion, but the word lingered behind every breath. He cited moments of forgetfulness, hinted at stress-related decline. used terms like emotional pressure and ambiguous intent. I didn't move. Neither did Grace. When it was our turn, she stood slowly, as if she had all the time in the world. No theatrics, no performance, just precision. She laid down the postnup first, notarized, witnessed, date-stamped. Then the mortgage records. Every payment made from my account, every confirmation under my name. And finally, the letter. Grace passed it to the judge like it was nothing more than an ordinary page, but I knew it was a grenade. "This letter," she said, her voice clear but calm, "is from St. Michael's Neurology Clinic. It's dated 3 months before Mr. Rivers's passing. It confirms, without condition, that he was of full cognitive capacity at the time of evaluation." The judge took a moment to read. The silence in the room grew so heavy, it felt like the walls were listening. "No signs of early cognitive decline," the judge read aloud. "Results fall within normal range." Atwood shifted. Iris dabbed at dry eyes. "Do you have any medical documentation to counter this?" the judge asked. Atwood opened his mouth, then closed it. "No, Your Honor." The judge didn't hesitate. She looked directly at me. "The postnuptial agreement is binding, the mortgage is clear, and the medical documentation is sufficient. This house legally belongs to Camille Rivers." She tapped her gavel once. Sharp. Final. "Case dismissed." I didn't smile. I didn't breathe, not at first. Just let the sound ring in my chest like a bell struck deep underwater. Grace leaned in and whispered, "You're free." But it wasn't freedom I felt. Not yet. It was something quieter. Equilibrium. The truth had risen, and it had stayed. Outside, the air was warmer than I remembered, spring trying to push its way through. But inside me, the frost had only just begun to melt. I'd chosen the velvet myself. Deep sea blue, like the sweater Marcus wore when we scattered his father's ashes. The color of calm water just before the storm. The urn sat in the center of the chapel, wrapped in that velvet, beneath the stained glass window that cast shifting gold and indigo across the floor. By the time I arrived, the pews were already half full. Friends from his firm, a few clients who'd driven in from hours away, and neighbors who remembered our porch light always left on too late. No one from his blood. I made sure of that. The guest list had been sent, cross-checked, enforced. I had spoken to the director myself. Iris Caldwell and Vivian Morrow were not to be admitted. Not after the lawsuit. Not after the lies. Not after everything. So when I saw them, slipping in like ghosts in coordinated black, veils down, heads bowed, I knew exactly what they came for. Not grief, not love. A final scene. I didn't hesitate. My heels echoed against the wood as I moved down the aisle, every head turning toward me as I walked. The organ quieted. Even the minister paused. I stopped beside the back pew, right in front of them. Vivian looked away, face pale beneath her netted veil. But Iris? She met my gaze head-on. Her mouth tilted into that same smile she used when pretending we'd always been close. "You're not on the list," I said softly. "We're here to say goodbye," she replied, voice honeyed and low. "This isn't about you." I leaned in, not close enough to touch, just enough for her to feel the weight of what I'd carried. "You're not here to mourn," I whispered. "You're here to perform. But I'm not your stage anymore." She stiffened. "I will walk out of this chapel right now," I said, "and I will take the minister with me. We'll hold the service in a garden, in a parking lot, anywhere but here. But you will not stay and pretend this man was yours to grieve." For a breathless moment, she didn't move. Then, Vivian touched her wrist. A silent tug. "Let's go," she said quietly. And they did. No scene, No shouting, just the quiet retreat of two women who no longer had an audience. When I turned back to the front, the sun had shifted through the glass, casting a streak of blue light across the velvet. I walked to the altar. My voice didn't shake. Goodbye, Marcus. The soil was colder than I remembered. I pressed my palms into it, bare hands digging deep into the earth behind the house, letting the dirt slide beneath my fingernails. I hadn't planned to garden that day. I had just stepped outside with a mug of tea, intending only to breathe. But something about the rosemary, wild and overgrown, curling toward the porch like it had been waiting for me, made me kneel. The garden had always been Marcus's domain. When he was alive, I used to watch him from the kitchen window, straw hat crooked on his head, humming some half-forgotten tune, labeling herb stakes in that neat engineer's handwriting. It was his way of building peace, with roots and water and sunlight. I went inside and opened the drawer in his office, the one I hadn't touched since the hearing. The gardening notebook was still there, tucked beneath old utility bills and seed packets. Worn leather cover, pages full of dreams, diagrams of raised beds, lists of companion plants, notes in the margins. On the very last page, in his hand, for Camille. When you're ready, start here. So I did. I planted rosemary. For memory, mint. For resilience, lavender. For peace. I planted slowly, deliberately. With every root I tucked into the soil, something inside me loosened. Not the grief. It would never fully loosen. But the hardness around it. The part that had calcified in the motel, in the courtroom, in the silence after the funeral. Hours passed. The sun shifted across the fence line. I didn't stop until the shadows stretched long across the grass. When I came back inside, dirt still on my hands, I found an envelope on the floor just behind the door. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a check, a partial refund from the funeral home, and a note, handwritten on the back of an appointment card. 5 words, no signature. You did the right thing. Vivian. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't redemption, but it was something. A bridge, maybe, or the beginning of one. I tucked the card into Marcus's notebook, right behind the page he left me. Outside, the mint leaves quivered in the wind, catching the late sun like silver. And in that quiet moment, I stopped trying to hold on to Marcus. I began learning how to grow from him. The morning was quiet in a way that didn't ask for permission. The sky had opened up, soft and blue, the kind of color you only get after a long rain has washed everything else away. I sat on the bench Marcus built beneath the maple tree, unfinished on one side, one slat missing. He said he liked it imperfect, said it gave things room to breathe. The herb garden stretched in front of me, humming gently with bees. Rosemary, mint, lavender, all reaching toward the sun like they finally believed in it again. I traced a piece of sea glass between my fingers, smooth and pale green, edges worn soft by time and tide. Marcus used to collect them on our walks, called them ocean scars turned beautiful. I heard the mail slot click. No footsteps. Just the soft metallic slap of something sliding through and settling on the hardwood floor. I didn't move right away. I watched a butterfly flit past the sage. I finished my tea. Then I stood, walked barefoot back into the house, and picked up the envelope. Plain white. No name. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Printed. Block letters. This house will always be mine. There was no signature, but it didn't need one. I could hear her voice behind every word. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I laughed softly. The kind that bubbles up when something that once terrified you suddenly loses its shape. I stepped outside and walked to the garden. The mint was thickest by the edge, where the soil stayed damp longest. I dug a small hole beneath the leaves, slid the letter inside, and covered it with dirt. No ceremony, no speech, just a closing. Then I whispered, "You don't haunt me anymore." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of crushed mint. I stayed a moment longer, tracing the edge of the sea glass, letting the warmth settle on my skin. There was no more court, no more watching the street, no more waiting for her car to appear like a shadow that wouldn't let go. I walked back to the house slowly. My house. The door creaked just a little when I pushed it open. Old wood, worn in all the right places. I stepped inside and turned, resting my palm against the frame. Then I closed it. Not slammed, not locked in anger, just gently. Click. From the inside. And for the first time since Marcus died, I didn't brace myself. I didn't hold my breath. I simply stood there, with the sea breeze behind me and the silence ahead, and felt the door settle into its frame like it knew me. Like it finally knew who belonged here. Me. Always me. I used to think silence was strength, that keeping the peace, biting my tongue, making room for others, was the same as being kind. But I've learned that some doors must be closed from the inside, not to shut others out, but to protect the peace we've fought to earn. Marcus taught me how to build a home, but it was in losing him that I learned how to claim it. The house didn't remember me when I returned. Not at first. But maybe that's what survival really is, teaching the walls to know your name again, rooting yourself in soil that once felt stolen, planting something, anything, so that grief has somewhere to grow that isn't your body. And now, when the wind moves through the rosemary and the sea glass glints in the morning light, I don't feel haunted. I feel whole. If you were in my place, watching the people who hurt you try to inherit what you protected, would you have fought back? Or would you have walked away? It's easy to let others define our worth, especially when they carry the titles of family or legacy. But what happens when protecting your peace means breaking those ties? This wasn't just about a house. It was about dignity, about boundaries drawn not in ink, but in silence, in resilience, in roots. So I ask you, what would you have done if they tried to evict you from your own life? Thank you for sitting with me in this story, through the silence, the courtroom, and the garden. If you've ever been pushed aside, made small, or quietly erased, I hope this gave you something back. This story wasn't just about me, it might be about you too. So tell me, have you ever had to take your name back?